This couple were crushing it from an income perspective with an income of over $500,000 a year, but they made a few mistakes over the last few years that effectively meant that it was going to take them an extra 10 years to be financially free. I wanted to unpack these because there's some common ones in there so that you can learn from them and not fall into the trap of making these mistakes for yourself. Now, these guys were a young couple in their early 40s. They were both executives, one in marketing, one in sales, and they were starting to hit their straps from an income perspective, particularly after going through the period of disruption around having kids, maternity leave, and those sorts of things. These guys had some awesome things that were going on with their money and a really solid foundation that they built from, but there was a few things that they'd done that ended up really holding them back. They sort of fall into a common trap of thinking that there are these things that are good that you can do with your money, but they didn't realize that doing the right thing at the wrong time means that it's actually the wrong move. So they bought their home a while back. They'd made some good money from this purchase. Sydney's eastern suburbs, they were pretty switched on with property, made a lot of really smart moves around this place, and the investment had made them a bunch of money. After buying this property, even with maternity leave, their cash flow was still quite strong, particularly helped with the lower interest rates that we were seeing at that time. And so they ended up buying a lovely lifestyle property down the south coast so that they can enjoy with their young family. They'd also set up a family trust for investing. This is based on some advice that they got from some colleagues and some mates that were doing similar things, and they've been doing a little bit of ETF investing through that trust company structure. Things were going along pretty well at this point, and they were happy with the progress that they made and the foundation that they had to build from. The challenges came through back end of 2022, 2023 in particular, as interest rates started cranking up. These guys had built up a bunch of equity in their property, but they still had a chunky mortgage on their own home. They also had this lifestyle property, which wasn't generating any income and had about $1 million in mortgage attached to it that needed to be serviced. And with the home mortgage plus the lifestyle property, that started to really crimp into their cash flow, even though their incomes were really strong. Now, the big challenge with this lifestyle property is that because they had essentially were getting no income from the property, it was using up a lot of their borrowing capacity so that they couldn't borrow more money from the bank, which meant because they were getting smashed with tax bills because their incomes were so high, they were really running out of levers that they could use to actually push that down even further. The other part is that they had this trust in place. Now, I love trust as a structure. I think they're great. I've got one myself. We've got a lot of clients that have these set up, but the reality is that they weren't investing enough money for the trust to be warranted. They'd paid money to set it up. They were paying money every year for the tax returns, and on top of that, then you have to deal with all of the admin yourself, and they just weren't getting a benefit out of it in excess of the cost. In fact, they were paying more than what it was actually delivering for them. And with their cash flow pretty tight for the foreseeable short term, it was unlikely to change anytime soon. Now, if you looked at what these guys were doing with their money, you'd be forgiven for thinking that they had a lot of smart things in place. They bought their own home, great. They were paying down their mortgage, great. They had a lifestyle property, great. They had a trust, doing some ETF investing. These are all good, smart things to do with your money. But for these guys, they got their timing a little bit off. And that's the lesson here when it comes to your money. You've got to do good things, but you've got to do them at a good time for you, because if you don't, you end up getting stretched more than you need to, and you can't make the progress that you want. For someone with the home paid off and tons of investments behind them, buying a lifestyle property is an awesome thing to do. But for someone that needs to use their borrowing capacity to build further investments and cut their tax bill, it can be a bit of a disaster. Similarly with a trust, if you've got strong contributions coming in, that can give you a lot of flexibility, seriously optimize your tax position. But if you're not putting that much money into a trust, or you don't have that much in there to begin with, you're also not going to be getting the benefit out of it. It's really common for people to hear these stories about what other people are doing, and you hear that this is a good thing to do. Trusts are good, lifestyle property good, doing this other thing is good. Each of these things can be good or not good. Whether they're good for or not for you really depends on you and what's going on with your money. So instead of thinking or falling into the trap of thinking that there's a set of good choices, instead you need to look at what you're considering doing, see how it fits with your money and your other goals to make sure that it is actually the right move for you.